I just want to say, we're looking at Boris Johnson's plane landing back at Gatwick Airport. He was obviously in the Dominican Republic. He's returning this morning, just about to touch down. Hang on a second, they are just about to touch down at Gatwick. Shall we wait for that? Here we go, Boris Johnson coming back, we assume to run in the leadership race. Oh, there we go, a smooth landing. So he's back. You don't think that Boris Johnson is the one to unite the Tory party?
Listen, I think when you see what people are saying out there and what big political figures and commentators are making the point about it, which is that it would be wrong for him to come back. There is still the Outstanding Privileges Committee. There are a whole host of issues as to why Boris can come back. We are trying to get, if those who are supporting him are expecting a different result, they're not going to get it. And I think we've got to be absolutely clear right now. The scale of the global economic crisis that is being faced by so many countries around the world needs people who have got the grasp economically to deal with the situation, to be able to ensure that we can get through this tough period. And to me, it's absolutely clear that Rishi Sunak is the only candidate available to be able to do this and to get us through and to unite the party, as you asked earlier.
OK, well, we shall see tomorrow. Anthony, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
OK, well, as I was saying there, Boris Johnson has now landed on that BA flight back from the Dominican Republic, just touched down at Gatwick Airport. Let's bring in Ali Fortescue. Ali, he's back in the country, but do we think he will be back in politics?
I mean, I think a few days ago this seemed quite far-fetched, but, you know, there's his plane, he's back in the country. Allies close to him have told us that he is up for it, he wants another go at the top job. I think the big question, well, there's two questions. One, will he meet the threshold of 100 MPs? And that is no guarantee whatsoever. I think, you know, people think he will get to 60, but beyond that will be more challenging. But if there is momentum behind him, could we see some people rowing in behind the former Prime Minister? If that looks like that's the way the wind is blowing, could he just get over 100 MPs? What is clear is that Rishi Sunak is at the moment the firm favourite with MPs. It looks like he has made it onto the ballot. His campaign saying that he has more than 100 votes. Of course, Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson, I think it's fair to say there's no love lost between these two. Rishi Sunak is seen by many as a person that took down Boris Johnson when he resigned in office, triggering, of course, Sajid Javid also resigned, triggering a wave of resignations that eventually toppled Boris Johnson's government. There has been some talk in some of the papers that we could see a Johnson-Sunak alliance, the two men coming together, former rivals, to bring the party together. But I've had a few conversations with people close to both of those men, and from the conversations I've had, you cannot see either of them serving in the other one's cabinet. As I say, you know, I haven't spoken to everyone. We don't know what is going to happen. Politics has been incredibly unpredictable, but it is, I think, hard for many to see these two men working together. Let's not forget Penny Mordaunt. Her name has also been in the mix. She is got, I think, 19 people backing her at the moment, but there are some who worry that she does not have the momentum behind her at the moment and she might not make it onto that final ballot. So will this be, I think, either a coronation for Rishi Sunak on Monday, who is the favourite at the moment, the firm favourite among MPs, or will Boris Johnson or Penny Mordaunt make it onto that final ballot? And we know that Boris Johnson does very well with the membership. I certainly sensed that over the summer when I was at the hustings. There was anger from some towards Rishi Sunak for what they perceived to be him stabbing Boris Johnson in the back. But will what has happened over the course of the last 6 weeks, Liz Truss's premiership, many Rishi Sunak backers feel vindicated by what has happened in the last couple of months? Will that change members' minds? As I say, we don't know what is going to happen. We don't know if Boris Johnson's even standing. People close to him have told some of us that it looks like he will want to go for the job. We don't know if he has always been someone that has never failed to surprise us all. We don't know if he wants to be the next Prime Minister if he is even going to put his name forward. I think he will want to know that he can win this if he's going to enter the race. Of course, Rishi Sunak hasn't entered himself either. So we're in a pretty extraordinary position right now where Penny Mordaunt, the only person to officially enter the race, she has, I think, 19 votes last time I checked. Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson are the front runners. Rishi Sunak by far the front runner when it comes to MPs backing him, but neither of those two men have actually put their names in the hat yet. So who will be the next Prime Minister? We don't know. We will know either on Monday next week and certainly by Friday next week.
Yeah, 2 days. Ali, I just want to talk about something you mentioned there and how this is playing out, first of all with the MPs and then with the members of the Tory party. I was talking to Anthony Magnal, he's a Conservative MP, he's backing Rishi Sunak, and I brought up the fact that a lot of people do indeed think that Rishi Sunak stabbed Boris Johnson in the back by resigning, and he retorted and said absolutely not. And that is, of course, what you would expect from Rishi's supporters, and a lot of them say that. But how do the MPs feel about it, and how do members of the party feel about what happened and how Boris Johnson left office?
I think there is a great strength of feeling on both sides when it comes to Boris Johnson. I think there are people who think the idea of him coming back, I find that quite upsetting, some MPs I've spoken to. There's a couple, Roger Gale, others, who have suggested they would leave the parliamentary party if Boris Johnson comes back. There are those that adamantly, Nadine Dorries is probably the best characterisation of this, but we know he's got the backing of some big names, including Jacob Rees-Mogg. Ben Wallace suggested he would potentially back Boris Johnson. So Boris Johnson, I think, elicits strong feelings on both sides. But in a sense, the same can be said to an extent, I think, for Rishi Sunak. There were certainly first-time round people that didn't want to see him be Prime Minister, and there are still those that don't. But I have to say some of those views seem to have softened. I was talking to one minister who didn't want Rishi Sunak to be Prime Minister first time round, but has decided that what has happened in the last few weeks with the economy, he is a man that can steady this. So I think there are those who have softened their approach, having not wanted Rishi Sunak to be Prime Minister. And I think you see that reflected in the numbers. So I do think, there is no clear unity candidate here. Penny Mordaunt's team might say that she is the unity candidate, but I don't think there is anyone that is clearly going to bridge the divide, and that is going to be the enormous challenge for whoever becomes the next Prime Minister.
OK, Ali, just to let you know what you're looking at, that's a British Airways flight that has just touched down in Gatwick Airport. It came from Punta Cana International Airport in the Dominican Republic. It is carrying Boris Johnson, and he's back in the UK. I just want to go, Ali, back to you and ask just a final question. This issue of the Privileges Committee process, just talk us through that and what could happen. Because if he does become leader, he still could lose his seat through the process, couldn't he? Yes,
so this is the Privileges Committee. They are looking at whether Boris Johnson misled Parliament over parties, which of course was one of the big things that brought down the former Prime Minister, what was going on in Downing Street during lockdown. The Privileges Committee are looking at that. That means that over the next few weeks or months, they'll be taking evidence, and that is something that people like Dominic Raab, who is Deputy Prime Minister under Boris Johnson, think will be, as he put it this morning, incredibly distracting and not what you want from the man who's going to be Prime Minister, and as you say, could potentially mean that he has to stand down. So it is a pretty extraordinary situation to be in. I think, his backers will say that he didn't do anything wrong, he'll clear his name, but Dominic Raab, Deputy Prime Minister under Boris Johnson this morning, saying that will be a huge distraction. He said he thinks Boris Johnson could return to frontline politics, but this is not the time for him to be Prime Minister. And that is certainly what Rishi Sunak backers will say today.
OK, Ali, thank you so much. Just to tell you again, Boris Johnson has arrived back in the UK. That's his BA flight, just touched down at Gatwick Airport from the Dominican Republic. We're waiting to see what happens as the next 2 days play out and indeed see if he declares his candidacy. But we will come back to that as and when. And Ali, we will come back to you. Thank you so much. Your party.
Yes, entirely so.
And why? I just want to say, we're looking at Boris Johnson's plane landing back at Gatwick Airport. He was obviously in the Dominican Republic. He's returning this morning, just about to touch down. Hang on a second, they are just about to touch down at Gatwick. Shall we wait for that? Here we go, Boris Johnson coming back, we assume to run in the leadership race. Oh, there we go, a smooth landing. So he's back.
So is Boris Johnson about to rise again? He's yet to confirm if he's keen to return to the heady heights of political... Stop dozens of MPs going public in supporting him. At Gandhi's circus in Stoke-on-Trent, people were first and foremost keen for a bit of light relief. But mention Boris Johnson's name and opinion is as divided as ever.
What do you think about the prospect that Boris Johnson could be back in Downing Street?
I think it would be the most terrible thing ever to happen in British politics. I think what's happening at the moment is, it's not legally undemocratic, but it feels undemocratic to have a change of leader and to not have any choice in that.
Good luck to him, I'm well up for it, go Bojo.
Why do you say that? Why?
Because I think he did a fantastic job during lockdown. It was the most difficult time in any Prime Minister's career, and I think he did so well.
But can Boris Johnson, just back from a holiday in the sun, beat his former Chancellor?
Good morning, Mr. Sunak. Are you running for leadership?
Rishi Sunak is also yet to declare, but he already has the backing of more than 100 Conservative MPs. That's the threshold needed to get on the ballot. His supporters include the MP for Stoke Central.
Is there one word that you would use to describe the prospect of Boris Johnson returning to Downing Street?
Catastrophic.
What about talk of a deal between Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak? Is that a reality?
I personally can't see a deal that would work. But my key reaction is, let's not forget Boris only left 6 weeks ago. The circumstances haven't changed significantly, and therefore why would the party change significantly? And especially at a time when we need stability.
Just down the road, the MP for Stoke North is a Boris Johnson backer. Although back in July, Jonathan Gullis resigned from the government, saying, "I feel for too long we've been more focused on dealing with our reputational damage rather than delivering for the people of this country." He wasn't available to explain why he's changed his mind. Boris Johnson has apparently called at least one MP this afternoon to garner more support. His backers are claiming he now has the required 100 MPs to enter the ballot. Stoke-on-Trent has become a litmus test for levelling up. Part of the so-called Red Wall, the city's 3 constituencies have all gone from red to blue since 2017. But with no end in sight to the current cost of living crisis, Stoke remains one of the most deprived parts of the UK.
Hey, it's Adam from StreamYard. We have an exciting new feature to announce called Green Room, which is now available